Hello and welcome, everybody out there in the internet universe. This is Coaching from the Heart. I am your host, Tyler Thurman, and joining me, as always, is my good friend and colleague and co-host, Harold Feddersen.
Hi, Tyler.
Hi, Harold. Welcome to the first episode of our lovely show of 2016. I am really excited to get going today. The topic for today's show is the difference that makes the difference. And we're going to jump into that in a moment. But real quickly, I just want to give people a place where they can find both Harold and myself. We're both transformative coaches and spiritual teachers. We work with people to uncover more and more of the beauty within. So if you are curious about our work, you want to join us on a more intimate adventure, then you can find myself at my website, www.coachtylerthurman.blogspot.com. And got all my links and free videos and articles you can find there. And Harold, where can everyone reach you?
You can reach me on my Facebook page, which is The Awakening Heart, or you can read my blog, which is hearthand.wordpress.com. And I actually also have, I put up a video, a solo video just, I think it was on New Year's Day, to be honest, about New Year's resolutions. So you can find me on YouTube. At Harold Feddersen is my channel.
I didn't see that. I'm going to have to check that out now. Fantastic. So our topic today, it's kind of along the lines of new beginnings, but we titled it The Difference That Makes the Difference. And I thought we could share from both kind of a coaching perspective, like in our work with other people. What is it that we think as practitioners is the difference that makes that thing that if we could give it to our clients or cultivate it or support them to find it for themselves, what is that thing that really truly makes a once and for all difference, kind of on the way to a wonderful life, as well as just our perspective as human beings. So it can be, I thought it could be twofold. So we'll do practitioners and then just our personal experience, which is really going to be the same thing. So, so I thought I would start with kind of some of my thoughts on the topic, and also one of the other things that you and I, Harold, both thought would be fun is this will give you a bit of a unique perspective and some distinctions between yours and my coaching styles, right? Because we're not exactly the same. so we'll have some fun kind of probably going back and forth a little bit and sharing our different thoughts on the topic. So just to get us started off, I was really doing some contemplating of this, the difference that makes a difference, because to be perfectly honest, we're kind of guessing, right? We work with people, we see massive shifts in people's lives, sometimes small shifts, but really what we're going for is helping people transform. That's why I call it transformative coaching. And when that happens for somebody, what's sort of the key ingredient? What's actually going on there? What's my role as a coach? Sometimes I don't think it's that much. But for me, that thing that's like the big one, that if everyone I worked with were to come away with this, it would be uncovering for themselves on a deep and meaningful level something they can rely on 100% of the time, no matter what. And I'll say what I mean by that. So one of the things that I find myself doing, and I see everybody else doing on the planet, is we're all sort of interested in, we use the word security, but it's really, we're looking for something solid to grab onto in a world that's full of change, right? Things are changing everywhere all the time, sometimes very quickly, sometimes very slowly. And it really it really makes a huge difference in our lives to find something, a solid foundation from which we can live our lives from. Now, that's what exactly is that? is is a is a deeper, longer conversation that I have with people over a period of months and sometimes years. But to put it as simply as I can, nothing like that exists in the physical universe, right? It'd actually be pretty fair to say that the only thing we can rely on in the physical universe is change, right? Now, some things are changing very slowly. So it creates the illusion of this is my rock, as it were. But if you give it enough time, that thing will go away, be taken from you, change forms in some way. And so you can't actually rely on, so there's kind of the main ones that people try to, they try to build their life on top of a foundation. There's the relationships with other people. There's our careers, and there's our physical health, like our body well-being. Those are kind of the three main ones. I don't. There's probably a couple more, but they're not coming to mind. But basically, pretty much everyone I meet, everyone I end up working with, is looking for a foundation in those things. They're looking for something solid, something they can rely on, something they can count on. So when things get tough in their life, that's where they can go for support. They can go for, love and peace and all those wonderful experiences. But the problem with that is they aren't 100% reliable, right? Relationships, they change over time. Every human physical body dies at some point. So that person is going to not be around forever, necessarily. At the very least, they're going to change, right? Our careers, we think, oh, that's a solid thing, and you hear stories all the time. People, they base their entire identity, their life on their job, in it for 40 years, and then they get let go. And they're like, oh God, what do I do? And then our physical health, that can be taken from us at any moment, right? I'm sure you all know somebody who that's happened to, and maybe it's happened to you. So what I'm really pointing to is something not of this world, because everywhere we look for stability in the world is going to let us down at some point. And therefore, it's not that participating in the world is wrong or it's not the way to go. Like, we have to participate in life, as far as I can tell. But there's something to be discovered that is I lack the language, right? It's spiritual, it's otherworldly, it's divine, um, it's godly, right? Of God is another word. Um, that's the only thing I've ever discovered for myself, and pointing other people towards it. Doesn't matter what you call it, but looking somewhere other than the world of form, if you will, for something reliable, something consistent. And to me, that thing is God or spirit or um, innate well-being. Sometimes I talk about it as. And so for me, the difference that makes the difference consistently with everybody I meet and work with, and myself personally, is our relationship, our personal experience of that deeper nature, the sort of the sometimes I've talked about on this show as the truth of who we are underneath the the facade, if you will. And the the more we explore that, it's not a on-off thing, right? We can develop a deeper and deeper understanding, deeper and deeper relationship, have deeper and deeper experiences of that source. But in everyone I see that's had a dramatic shift in their life, there has been some kind of uncovering, awakening, understanding, experience of something spiritual. And you don't have to call it spiritual. It's just a word to point towards something other than the physical universe. So that's my take, Harold. I mean, I feel like I'm monologuing here, so I gotta get the conversation going.
So the difference that makes the difference as a coach. That's what we're in.
It's just in general. You just go for it.
Okay. So I think a good analogy would be when I meet with someone. Let's say they've been living their whole life from inside of a room, which has windows, and from inside of the room is where all of their experiences come from. And they look outside the windows, and there's life on the outside of the window, and they interact with life from inside of this room. And I show up, and I actually don't enter the room. I'm out on the deck, and we have a conversation, and then at some point, the person leaves the room and comes out onto the deck and has this shift in awareness that they've lived their whole life from inside of this room without even knowing it. No, they had no idea that they were in the room. And all of a sudden, it's like, there's there's a whole other world that exists. So the difference that makes the difference in coaching is in that, because we get wrapped up inside of a structure,
Right.
usually a thought structure or a pattern or emotional pattern. And because I'm not in that pattern or not in that structure, I can talk from outside of that structure, which then helps them sort of shine the light on the fact that they're inside of the structure. And that makes all the difference, because once you're out on the deck, all of a sudden, things that were not possible for you inside of that room are now possible. And then the next step is just to move that from that place into the world. So, in coaching terms, people often will hire us because they want something in their life that they don't currently have. And we can't have something outside of the room if we only want to stay inside the room. So part of part of coaching is um, inviting people outside of the room, which they don't know they're in order
Right.
to, I want X. X is currently outside of this room, whether you know it or not. It's outside of the room. So
Right. I was just gonna say that a lot of people probably don't know anything exists. They don't even know they're in a room. They think this is all there is. Right.
yeah, that's absolutely true. So when they realize you're out on the deck and you're talking to them through an open patio door, and then they step through it, it really can completely revolutionize their lives.
So it sounds to me like I love how you put that. You're kind of touching on sort of almost a because in a lot of ways it's a self-created room, right? It's a sort of boundary conditions. Um, Not that we didn't consciously put them there, but
Our parents and our upbringing in society actually mostly did most of the construction. We got to decorate it, but it's mostly just built for us, around us.
damn it, Harold, it's all their fault. Mm, they need to pay
Until
for
you
it. No, I'm just
until
kidding.
you realize you're in the room, and then it's all yours.
Right, right. Yeah, I like what you said there because that it really is. And I think it's speaking to what I was speaking to with just completely different language in the sense
Mm,
that there's some kind of awakening. And that's why I love that you use that word um, in your it's your Facebook group and stuff. Is that the name of your business, by the way? The Awakening Heart, or is that
no,
that's different?
yeah, just Feddersen
Okay.
coaching.
So yeah, but the Awakening Heart, that kind of to me um, speaks to that difference that makes a difference
Mm,
is it's some kind of um, awakening, like where we see you see things that you never saw before, but
yeah.
not superficially, right? Just not, it's not like I'm seeing this building for the first time. It's your it's you're seeing it with new eyes, right?
Hmm.
Like from behind the eyes is sometimes how I talk about it. Um, Not literally, but there's a new sight there. We're seeing from a new place, from a different understanding of life, humanity. It could be just our life, right? Uh, there might not be that much altitude to, to your awakening, but it also is, in my experience, um, it can be kind of an unfolding too, right? It's not always although people do tend to report there being a big aha moment, right?
Hmm.
Um, but that doesn't mean there wasn't a bunch of other aha moments that led up to that one.
There can be a
Uh,
long or short trail to the viewpoint, right?
yeah, the journey there is going to be unique for pretty much everybody, in my experience. But people get really caught up in that, like, oh, what's the right way to go about this journey, you know? Um, but there is no right way, so that's I think important to focus on. I realized in my sort of intro there, I didn't talk much about the coaching element of it. For me, um, I'd love to just talk about what you think our role as coaches is in facilitating that awakening.
Mm. I think probably one of the biggest is I'm just going to say it's probably we're probably both the same, but I'll speak for myself. Um, it's my experience that I can see a person clearer than they can see themselves. Um, because they're inside of the room, um, they often just can't see who they are. Uh, but one of my favorite things is to be with a client and then you just see them. You just see
Mm.
like their light, and then once you see it, you can speak to it, and then if they're willing to step out of the patio door, they can see it too, and then that's an incredibly powerful moment. Um,
Right.
but as far as coaching goes, that's one of the big things is just you can just really see them.
Yeah, and it's kind of like being with them. Um, it without even doing really much of anything, can make a huge difference in that regard.
Hmm.
It's 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 cool to be a part of that. Um, yeah, you're right. Because we can see something about them. A lot of ways I think about it in terms of I'm more stubborn than they are in my seeing their divinity than they are in seeing their whatever false self they've created for themselves. Whatever you were talking about as a room, kind of whatever boundary conditions they've created with their own thinking.
Hmm.
Um,
It's a limited and contained
yeah,
space.
and in that sense, it's inaccurate, right?
Hmm.
If it's not a complete picture, it's an inaccurate picture, inaccurate understanding of themselves and of how their life works.
Hmm.
And there's something for me fun about um, I talk about it sometimes as grounding, right? I it's really my only job in a lot of ways is to be so grounded in spirit or essence, or we use a lot of different words to describe kind of the inner beauty. If I'm grounded in that place in me, unwaveringly so, um, people are either going to run for the hills when they sit with you for a while because they're not ready to have that conversation, or they're not ready to be with somebody who sees them as not broken,
Hmm.
um, or they're ready to be there, and our job is just to be steadfast in that. Because basically what my clients try to do is sit there and they try to convince me about everything that's wrong with them.
Mm.
Everything that's wrong with their life, their relationships, you know, everything. Their their mental well-being, all that stuff. And um, I don't see it that way, right? That doesn't look true to me. And so the more I look at them, or we as teachers and practitioners look at them with those eyes in that light, people can't help but oftentimes begin to look for themselves in some way. Because at some point, if they don't look, they're not going to see.
Hmm.
So there is sort of a willingness there on their part, but that's not really up to us. We can speak to them about that, um, but ultimately, yeah, there's something really really fun and beautiful about just being with somebody, um, basically without judgment, or without as much judgment as they're used to, maybe, because we still have egos and we get caught up in our own thought systems. But when we're with people in that way, something occurs. It's hard to put words to it. Uh, so yeah, that's kind of the. Anything else you want to add to the that's more specifically like the coaching part of
Hmm.
it?
Yeah, and I didn't know we were gonna talk about that. So the
I
whole
just sprang in the
room
moment.
analogy is just like it's like right off the top of my head, but it does actually, if you follow it out, it does kind of work because once someone's outside of the room and they're on the deck, it's like the whole world is bigger now, and then eventually, the yard becomes sort of a looser entanglement of the room. And so then it's time to go larger. And then, instead of standing on the deck with them, I actually stand out in the neighborhood. And then, and it just keeps expanding out and out and out.
Right.
So I think in that sense, if I follow that thing out, I think it would work. I don't know. That's
Yeah,
just
it's an unfolding. It's an
mm-hmm.
unfolding. That it's just kind of a journey we take with people, essentially. Um, there's not a finite ending, or I guess in a lot of ways there's a beginning, um, but everyone is somewhere on the spectrum of understanding or misunderstanding the truth behind life. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm, some purveyor of truth, like the one and only. But the only reason somebody would come to me is because, like you said, we can see a little bit more of it than they can, at least at that moment in their life, right? Or, like, there's areas of my life where I have blind spots, right? That's why I, seek out coaches and teachers and support. Um, but there's just this, we're not taught from the get-go about self-exploration, about discovering what's within, what's in the mind. And we don't know that there's all these limitations that we have placed on our infinite capacity for peace and love and joy. We don't know that we've placed restrictor plates on that deeper essence that we all are and we all have access to. And so sometimes it just helps sitting with somebody who sees it a little bit more clearly than you do in the moment, right? And actually, ultimately, I tell all my clients this, or potential clients, that ultimately my goal with people, if I were to have one, is for them to outgrow me, right? For them to see it more clearly than I do. I think some practitioners get caught up in a sort of cycle of dependence, right? Where they think, I need that person so that I can get what I want in my life. And my goal is the opposite. My goal is for you to not think you need me. You know, I one of my mentors used to say, "I only came to tell you I didn't need to come." Right? It's within you and me and all of us. And so in a lot of ways we don't do much, right? But the little bit that we do can make a huge difference. To get back on topic, right? So Harold, for you, is that pretty much hold up for your experience of like your own transformations that you've had in your life, like the kind of the big awakenings, if you will?
um it's funny because I've been thinking about this topic obviously differently. So the difference that makes the difference. So I think, there's the on the surface stuff. So the difference that makes the difference, one, Finding certain teachers was a difference that made the difference. Um, that was huge. So my spiritual teacher currently is, currently, I say currently, like I'm just going through them.
You just hopping from one to the next.
Yeah, no, and it's been, geez, 8 years or something like that. Is Audrey Shante, and he has been the difference that makes the difference in so many ways. Um, and then another difference that made the difference was the coaching program. Entering in with accomplishment coaching. That was definitely a difference that made the difference. And then I think
so you're kind of speaking to the sort of the physical
like the thing,
forms,
yeah,
right?
like the thing that you do.
Yeah, which again can and will be unique for everybody.
Oh, of course, yeah.
So, but yeah, just personally speaking, like, but I think for me, it's worth sort of outlining the distinction that it's not the thing itself necessarily, although it sort of is for us, right? But because it's different for everybody, it kind of points to there being something universal behind the teacher, behind the program, behind the book or the course, or the coach, um, and so while people and books and resources are conduits for that sort of, awakening, if you will, it's not necessarily that in and of itself, right?
No, it's absolutely not that. No. Yeah, because
But it's kind of fun to talk about those things that we've been through, right?
yeah, because that's where that's where the thing happened, if you will.
The specificity. But I always put that in there as a caveat because people like to get really caught up in the form, and so they say, oh, I've got to do it exactly how Tyler did it so that I can have that experience for myself. That's just not the case.
No, it's not even close.
Yeah.
So yeah, so the next step is to go into, so just taking those two examples for me, what was the thing under the surface? You know, so for I remember very distinctly having a conversation with a friend, and I was telling him about this teacher, and he had these audio CDs, and this was quite a while ago, and I was like, geez, I don't know, like I'd never bought like an audio program or anything.
Right.
And he had these CDs, and it was like $90 or something. And I was like, that just seems like so much money for just some CDs. And anyway, that was all the surface fear stuff. But what was underneath of it was the actual fear of entering. There was this fear of entering into the cave, if you will. So the difference that made the difference under, because I could say, just go buy those CDs and your life will be, that's not true. So the difference under that was the willingness to step through the fear of what I don't know I'm entering into, because we often stop at that fear, and the fear, that's just where we stop. We're afraid, so we don't go further.
Yeah, kind of afraid of the unknown, or what we'll find, or something new. One of the distinctions I like to use with people is, we use the word comfort zone, right? It's kind of a misnomer, actually, in the sense that usually it's not that comfortable, but it's very familiar, right? So our current paradigm of our life, our current thought system and structure, our beliefs, our values, the way that we think, the way that we live, it's so familiar to us that it creates the illusion of comfort, I think. And there is a real resistance to exploring something, as you so well said, outside the room, because it's different, right? It's bigger. it's it's there's less, there's more sort of abstraction, if you will. There's less structure. And for me, that's why there's so much value in seeing kind of even though I've probably only glimpsing the big picture, and seeing there's something behind it all, that's always there, even if we don't know what it is. There's no right words you can put to it, but there's something consistent, and not only consistent in my experience, but quite beautiful to be discovered outside the room. And so it's worth exploring, but it's totally understandable that people, myself included, have fear and resistance to stepping out there.
Mm-hmm.
It's
And the
scary,
closer
Harold.
you
It's scary.
the closer you get, so if the room that we're using as the analogy, if the room is the comfort zone, the closer you get to the door, which leads to the deck, the closer you get to the door, the more fear you're going to feel. So if you stay in the center of the room, you're really cozy. If you get closer to the edges, things start getting. So that's what it was for me. I was coming up against an edge, and in that
Yeah.
instance, I stepped over the edge, and
Yeah.
nothing's been the
And
same
and
since.
you find the kicker is you find there's something solid to step onto there, right? You don't plummet off the cliff and into oblivion. I mean, in some ways you kind of do, right? But you just don't hit. There's nothing to hit, right? There's no splat. There is, you sort of stepping out into the mist, if you will, and then you find, I'm supported out here. I can actually live my life out here. And whereas that wasn't a possibility before. And my point before, which I was just going to go back to, was, so in other words, I don't call it the comfort zone. I call it the familiar zone.
Mm.
But that's just totally irrelevant to the deeper layer of this conversation. So yeah, but it's yeah. So sorry, I kind of interrupted you. You're going into the fear zone, and coming out the other side.
Yeah. So that's the what's under the surface of the first difference that made the difference. And then the second one that I brought up, there are lots, right? There are tons of differences that makes the difference. But the second one was entering the coaching program. And it was completely different. That what's underneath of it is completely different than the first example. So the first example, what I was coming up against was my fear sort of entering the cave. So the difference that made the difference was stepping through that fear. Whereas with the coaching program,
and just to clarify for folks, Harold and I took, because I don't think we ever talked about it on the show before.
Oh yeah, you're probably right.
Harold and I both participated in our coach training programs with a company called Accomplishment Coaching. They've got a few different run programs around the country. So if you're interested, you can check that out. Just quick Google search will get you there, I'm sure.
Yeah, that was how we met.
It was a good, 15 months we spent together? It was pretty intense.
Yeah, that was really intense. So if we go under the surface, because on the surface it's like, oh, you entered a coaching program. But if we go under the surface of that one, the difference that made the difference there was actually, I just knew that this was the right step, and I just flowed right into it. Like it was a huge financial commitment. It was a huge logistical commitment, because it was out of Seattle, Washington, and I live in what would appear to most people northern Canada. It's actually kind of in the middle of British Columbia, but it seems like I'm on the edge of the planet. So logistically, you know, there's a bunch of stuff to go through, but all of the sort of details were not relevant. So the difference that made the difference under the surface of that was seeing that this is the path, this is the stream, and just fearlessly flowing right into it. And you know, as life can happen when we're ready to enter that stream, just all the things just sort of come together. All those little details just iron themselves out, and off you
Right.
go. So it's
Right.
fascinating to me when I look, because I've been thinking about this for the last week or so. Looking back, you know, that the underneath stuff, like who I'm
Right.
being, the presence of
It's
what I am, was totally different in those two instances.
yeah. I love that you brought that up because it's funny. I because you brought up the specifics, and I wasn't even thinking about those, right?
Mm,
But I can very easily go back and be like, okay, yeah, this is sort of the journey that I've taken. You know, it was just I was in the moment at the time, right? It's only a journey when you look back,
yeah.
but I can very easily sort of pinpoint some of those moments. Um, but they really were, I think, just different flavors of the same thing each time it happened, right? Or each, you know, along the way. Um, while I was in very different places on the planet, very, you know, with very different people, um, uh, my that thing under the surface was a very similar thread that runs through all of them, I think, in that it's, you know, sort of the same structure, if you will. It's some kind of deeper seeing or deeper being or deeper knowing. It kind of, those, you could probably use all those interchangeably. um, there's almost certainly, at least for me, I'll just speak for myself, some element of that in every moment of my life where it's like my eyes were opened a little bit more than they were before. Not my physical eyes, obviously, but sort of inner sight is how it's sometimes talked about, and inner understanding. Um, and I just think it's funny because, you know, I'm glad you brought up the specifics because, you know, I could lay them off. I kind of got into the world of personal development with neurolinguistic programming, which I don't talk about, do anything with that anymore.
Mhm.
And yet it was an integral step in me. It was the first moment in my life where because I did a sort of an immersion training program over a few weeks, and read a bunch of books ahead of time, you know, before I did the actual training. But it was the first thing I'd ever explored in my life that really opened up an inner world for me to explore. Like up until that point, everything in my life was externally focused.
Mhm.
Right? It was the world, our culture at large, generally speaking, the narrative is change your life, your circumstances, so that you can have a more wonderful life. That's how you do it. That's the strategy. It's, you know, the foolproof strategy, right?
Yeah, make more money, get a better car.
Yeah, you know, a more beautiful, you know, partner, um, yeah, all that stuff, you know, more physically fit and attractive, all that, you know, and that was the first point in my life. You know, I just didn't know. I didn't know there was an inner world. I kind of knew like thinking happens, I guess, and that, you know, I'd tried to control that in the past, but that didn't really help. Um, even though that's kind of what NLP is a little bit. Um, and everything since then, you know, sort of talk about as a sort of a spiritual journey, is more an uncovering of more of that, right? Of more of what is within, not within the body, but within, the mind, or just within us, whoever that is. And sort of uncover, and then you start to realize there's all this stuff that goes on within. There's this mental activity, and then you start to uncover that a lot of it's false. Right? It's just not true. Nobody ever taught me that growing up, but it makes a huge difference to see that. Right? I'm guessing you probably agree. It's just, the more we uncover, the more we see about what's going on behind the scenes, or the more we experience that deeper part of ourselves, the more wonderful my life gets, and the more wonderful the people's who's take the journey with me, their lives get as well. And they don't have, like, it's not a prerequisite. Working with Harold and I, obviously it can't be, but it's, I wouldn't know what else to do with my time. I can't think of a better use of my time than pointing people towards that part of themselves that they haven't yet seen much of, but it's the part of themselves that the more they see of, the more wonderful their life gets. And I think that's just another way of talking about, like you said, stepping outside those boundary conditions of our own mind, that we have placed there without knowing that we've placed them there. So that's why I was actually going to comment on that. You said you sort of were stepping out into the fear, or in the face of the fear, right? And then it could be the fear of anything, right? The unknown, rejection, all sorts of stuff.
Success.
Yeah, we can make up fear about anything we want.
Whatever it is. Yeah.
Yeah. So we get caught up in the form of what's the fear about? No, it's helpful to know about fear in general. And then you see, as you step through it, you see it was unfounded, right? It wasn't based in truth. That's what we discover. Now, I'll make a quick distinction. It's a different time, different conversation, different place, but a distinction between fear and the awareness of danger. So sometimes your awareness of danger is founded. Right? It's based on a real bear chasing you in the woods, or somebody actually threatening your physical well-being. Right? That would be awareness of danger. Whereas most fear it's just unfounded. There's nothing of substance there. And the only way we discover that is by stepping into it head on.
I read a quote, I think. Don't quote me on this. I think it was Byron Katie, and I might butcher this, but
that's okay. I'm sure Byron Katie would forgive you.
She's probably, she'd be okay with it.
She's a pretty enlightened cat.
Yeah, she's fine. It's we're only ever afraid of not getting what we're reaching for, or we're afraid of losing what we're holding on to. And I think that's generally what it is.
Yeah. And there's just so, and that kind of actually takes me back to where I started, at least, which is sometimes I talk about it is a love not of this world. That's how my main spiritual practice, a lot of is I study the text, A Course in Miracles, and it talks about that essence or inner inner light as a love not of this world. And for me, the more I explore that, the more I discover that, the more I release all of the boundaries I've created between me and that, the less a lot of those fears, the less relevant those fears are, right? Because in a lot of ways, what do we have to be afraid of when there is this infinite capacity for love in our heart and our spirit that can't be taken from us? This infinite capacity for peace and joy. It doesn't mean you're going to feel it, you're going to be in it 100% of the time. That's not my experience. But an infinite capacity to see that, to experience it, to be that in any moment. I know that exists, and in those moments where I know that exists, there really truly is nothing to fear. And so as I love how you put it, Harold, as we step out into the world, we step outside the room that we previously thought was all there is. It becomes a completely different experience of life going forward with something to hold on to, not sort of desperately grasping at it, right? But something we can go back to again and again and again, which is always with us. And just knowing that something like that exists, and it doesn't just exist, it exists within all of us, is just so comforting to me. And for me, it really paves the way for a life. I want to use the word extraordinary life, but it's available to all of us, so that would make it unextraordinary. Right? It's not realized for most people, but it's available to all people. Anything else you want to add here at the? What do I usually say? Any parting shots?
Yeah, that's what it is. We missed that last time. Yeah. No, I think it's the interesting thing about this particular conversation is, it invites us to look into the past, which is can be useful in a sense that we can see. It's like, here was the event, for you it's the NLP, for me let's say it was the coaching or whatever. We can see the event, but then we can actually mine, once we're far enough away from it, we can actually mine all of the juice. We can see who we were being, what did we actually step through in order to invite that difference that made the difference, right?
Right.
Because ultimately we are the ones who are inviting and stepping into it. A lot of people think, they just have to wait, and it is going to happen. Whatever, the difference that makes the difference is just going to happen to them at some point. But ultimately, you have to invite, and then once you invite, you have to be willing to step through whatever it is. In my examples, there was the fear I had to step through, and then the second one, I had to step into the flow.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I like how you put that, and I think I would just add to that yeah, because I think you were kind of speaking to this, the sort of, there's a willingness. That's really where that's really all you need to start. If
Mm-hmm.
you're sort of out there saying like, well, I don't even know where I would begin to explore this for myself. That difference that makes the difference. If you're sitting there and your life, looks, for lack of a better term, shitty to you. It looks like a mess. It looks like it's broken. Um, all it takes is a willingness. I think you and I have used the word surrender before.
Hmm.
That I really like as well. Just kind of hop on. Say you know, there's a tipping point, I think, for a lot of people where we say there's got to be something different than this. And that's what sparks us to be willing to look in a different direction for that difference, right? Whatever it is, it's intangible. It's, words are meaningless really for the most part when we're talking about it. But, looking for that thing that's gonna transform your life, all you have to do is be willing. And really, even in a lot of ways, we don't have to force that, right? We just will find ourselves in a place where, okay, everything I've tried didn't work, right? All this external searching, the manufacturing expedition, the self improvement, the fix it jobs, and you get to that end place and you say, this is it. I thought it would be better. You reached the goal. You did the 10-week program of making yourself into a better person. What do we say, Harold? The 10-step or 7-step
10 steps to complete enlightenment or whatever.
to a better life. Yeah, yeah. I did the processes. I did hundreds of different processes. If you're like Harold and I, that's probably your story. Um, and it all kind of sort of worked, but not really, right? And and then you get to that place and you say, okay, I'm ready. I'm ready to explore this kind of in a different light. Um, oh, I thought you were going to say I muted myself.
No, I had another parting shot actually.
Okay, yeah, keep partying. I like it.
Because I sometimes forget this one, which is hilarious to me. But if you look back at all of the differences that made the difference, the one thing you'll find is that the call to the whatever the thing is comes from the heart, not from the head.
Mm.
Like the
Oh.
reason why we enter all of these 7-step, 3-step, 10-step, 20 weeks, 4 days, whatever it is, the reason why we enter into those is because we're in an internal conversation in our head about something that's wrong. And if you look back at the real differences that made the difference, it was actually your heart that asked for it, that
Mm.
invited you to it. So the difference that makes the difference, in my experience, always comes from the heart.
Oh, I love that you said that. Yeah, I can't believe we left that out. No, I think it was in there. We just didn't use that language, right? But
I don't know.
because yeah, and what another way of talking about it is just like it's not the intellect, right? It's not something that can be analyzed in the way that we're taught to analyze things in school,
Hmm.
right? It's different. I don't really know what it is. I know it's different though. Um, and that's you put it as well as anybody could put it. I think it comes from the heart.
Hmm.
And even if you're in that heady space, it's also kind of nice to know that that's probably right where you need to be to at some point get you to a place where you'll be willing to look from the heart, right?
Hmm.
Because it will continue to not work as you continue to look where it isn't. Sometimes I use the analogy of looking in the sock drawer for your t-shirt. Right? It doesn't matter how hard you look in the sock drawer, how focused intensity, right? If it's not in there, it's not in there. And, most people most of the time are just very simply, they're looking in the wrong direction. Another way of saying that would be they're looking with their head, right? They're
Mhm.
trying to find it physically, oftentimes. And it's just somewhere else, right? One of my mentors, I think I first heard this from Michael Neal, one of my just wonderful teachers and mentors. He says, look where you don't know where to look.
Mhm.
And that was infuriating to me at first. But I kind of get what he meant by that,
You can't find
because
it in the room you're in.
you can't find it in the room you're in.
It's
That
out
was,
on the deck or beyond.
yeah. Harold, that was as good a parting shot as I think we could have. So it's probably
Thank
a
you.
good place to call it.
Hmm.
Yeah. So thank you everyone for joining us and bringing in the new year with Harold and myself. Um, it's a pleasure to be back with you, and we're gonna just keep on rolling through 2016, I think, because I'm having a ton of fun with this. So,
Yeah, this is very
um,
enjoyable.
and feel free to send us feedback as well, and I think the technical snafus got worked out a little bit more on this particular one. So we'll see. So just before we wrap up, if you want to reach Harold or myself to work with us on a deeper, more personal level, you can find me at www.coachtylerthurman, that's TYLERTHURMAN.blogspot.com. And Harold, you?
I can be found on Facebook at The Awakening Heart, or my blog, which is hearttohand.wordpress.com, or you can subscribe to my YouTube channel, which is just Harold Feddersen.
Fantastic. So until next time, we wish you a very happy new year and all the love you could find in your heart. And we'll see you next time.